Welcome back, everybody. And as promised, I got my good buddy and the future president or president-elect Tim Wehner from NARPM with me. Tim, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Pete. Appreciate the time.
Oh, you're welcome, man. All right, so Tim,
this is gonna be weird. We spent so much time together, just like board meetings, all that sort of stuff, and now I'm gonna pretend like you're just interviewing me, and it's not just a conversation, right?
so you know what the funny thing is, man? Liz Clayman, I interviewed her earlier this year, and we've been friends for years. And when I interviewed her, I actually learned more about Liz than I did when we were just sitting in meetings together. And so my guess is that you and I will probably learn something new about each other, even though we've been buddies for a few years, serving on the board and everything.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited then.
As of this recording, you're the NARPM 2023 president-elect, right? We're in 22.
Yep.
So how has NARPM impacted your business?
Yeah, it's a great question. From a business perspective overall, not just a personal perspective, I think NARPM has had countless impacts of it from when we started our business to now. It's just almost immeasurable, but some things that really stick out, just having an understanding of what property management really is and what it means to be a good property manager. Duke and I think went to our first NARPM event in Atlanta. It was like Eastern Regional, back when we used to do regional conferences. I don't know if you remember that, but it might have been 2010-ish. And we sat down with some folks, and we didn't really know what the heck we were doing, to be honest with you. Duke had been open for a couple of years, and I'd been working for Duke for close to 1 year. And we were getting by day to day, scrambling, answering phone calls, but we didn't have any structure to it. And so, just really basic, simple answer. NARPM helped us structure our business from top to bottom. So, we went through a million different iterations on how we do this thing. Like, we did departmental model, we did portfolio-based model. We do kind of a hybrid now. NARPM has been there every step of the way to help us help our leadership grow, and then also help our people grow. We've always made it a really big point, back when we were Dodson, to get our folks involved. As leaders of a business, you only have so many hours in a day, and obviously you want to devote as much as you can to your people, but you don't always have that extra hour, 2 hours a day to try to give to your people to develop them. And NARPM has done a really good job of helping us there as well. So I know that was kind of a long-winded answer, but I'm sure you felt some of the same things in your world too.
So two things. One is I truly believe that your business only grows to the level of your competency as a leader.
Yeah.
And so having NARPM hold your hand and give you those growth spurts of leadership allows you to grow your business. And then, so I got an interesting tidbit. You probably didn't, maybe not know this. My first conference was NARPM National in San Diego back in, I think it was 2015 or 2016. And
in La Jolla?
La Jolla. Yep. And one of the first people I sat down and listened to as a presenter was Duke Dodson. And I literally, that whole conference, my head was completely blown. I wrote so many notes. And then I
hope you lost them all if there were notes from him.
So if you are a member listening and you have not been to a national conference, it's highly, highly recommended.
Oh yeah. I remember that conference very, very well. It was actually, just personal tidbit, but I think we had been to maybe one other national conference, and Duke and I had decided that we were going to go out there. We actually flew our dads out there and played golf one day before the conference. And then Duke's dad went to like all the sessions. It was great. But I remember taking a lot of notes in that one as well. Obviously it was beautiful. And so it's nice to be engaged in that. But yeah, it was a really great event, as all the national conferences are.
If you ever want to learn how to take the most advantage of a conference, I actually did a podcast with Deb Newell, and I would highly recommend you go back and look and listen to that podcast if you're listening now. And Deb has some really great tidbits on how to get the most out of a conference.
Because that's an important piece of it, because there's so much when you go to a conference. You really do have to have a strategy.
Yeah, or your team's going to hate you if you come back and diarrhea to mouth and you want to let everybody know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So Tim, you have two young children, and being on the board at NARPM, especially at the national level, requires a lot of time and travel. Mm-hmm. So why do you give back so much to NARPM?
Well, I suppose I could answer that question in a similar way to answering your first question. But yeah, I mean, I've got two little boys, 6 and 4, sitting back there right behind me if you're on video. And it is a sacrifice to not be with them a lot of the time when we're traveling quite a bit, and it's tough. But I think it's important, you know, the maybe the martyr answer is, oh, I just love giving back, and it inspires me to see people smile on their faces when, you know, I'm able to help them learn something new or create an organization that helps somebody. You know, selfishly, I think NARPM has given so much to me personally. You know, the first question was about the business, but to me personally, you know, leadership skills, understanding new perspectives, you know, dealing with Scott Abernathy is a lesson that I'll take with me from now until my deathbed, learning to deal with personalities like that. You know, it's given me so much. It's worth the sacrifice to try to get back to that organization. I almost view NARPM as a person. Like, thank you so much for your friendship over the years, because it's just given me so much. But you know, the other side of it too is the relationships. They're really important to me. I mean, I tease Scott all the time. He'd tease me right back, but that's somebody that I can rely on every day of my life if I have a personal issue, business issue, whatever it may be. And furthering those relationships with people who are in the trenches with you on a daily basis is really important. And when you're around the leaders in NARPM, you know, you've experienced this. It's the best of the best of the NARPM folks. And so developing those relationships is really important to me, not only from a business perspective, but from a personal perspective, right? I was one of my go-to people when I'm having issues with my kids is Melissa Sharon, right? She's got young kids too. She sacrifices, and it's like, hey, why do we do this? And it's because you know, you don't always get those relationships just from you know, being being in the industry on your own. It's a lot different than having people that you can serve with and develop those big relationships with. Did that answer your question?
It does. Look, when I was the regional vice president, man, I got to meet the cream of the crop of property managers, all from all over the country.
Yeah.
Now it's really great to see all the different perspectives and learn from so many great people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really valuable life lesson.
Yeah, not just at NARPM, but like whatever you're doing, where can you meet those people to bring you to the next level? Where can you meet the people that they're there where you want to be? Right? How do you get there?
Yeah, and they push your limits. They stretch you. You know, they stretch your thought process, how hard you're willing to work, and your understanding of property management. You know, it's always changing, and so if you're not paying attention, it can pass you by pretty quick. And the people that are paying attention are the people that are involved. And I think that's really important in furthering the way we take this industry and the way we shape the organization, which I think NARPM, you know, back to your original question, you know, what's NARPM given to your business? It's helped us stay on the forefront of what's happening in the industry. And I think it's our duty as leaders to make sure that NARPM stays on the forefront of the industry. And that's another reason why I like to give back.
So you've been involved in property management for many years now. So how did you get into business, and more importantly, what keeps you in it?
I got kind of a long story on how it's kind of a funny story. So maybe I'll share it. You know, like everybody who's in the business now, I just grew up dreaming of being a property manager, and that's so when I was 6. Now I'm teasing.
Astronaut, property manager,
exactly. No, so no, it's funny. You know, I graduated college in 2008. Not the best time to graduate college, if we all remember, during the Great Recession.
The subprime deal hit us.
Subprime deal hit us. The Great Recession hit us. I think I was one of like 20% of my graduating class to have a job leaving college, which is a very, you know, usually that percentage is inverse. It's 80% versus, I think it's even more than that now. But so went up to DC, had a job for a year, got laid off, unfortunately, moved back to Richmond, Virginia, which is kind of where my college that I went to is just outside of that. And was just working like retail jobs, anything I could pick up, and decided that I was going to go to a networking event at 7:30 in the morning which to a 23-year-old is pretty early, for the college that I went to. And woke up at like 6:30. My friend had come into town. We had gone out the night before. I was like, I'm going to skip it. And then I was like, no, you know what? You got to get your butt up and go. And I went, and I actually met Duke Dodson, who owned the company at the time. It was him and one other person. And met him, kind of developed a little bit of a relationship. He needed some help 2 weeks later. He called me and said, hey, can you come in for a couple of days while I hire somebody else? So I was working for Duke in the morning and then working at Dick's Sporting Goods in the afternoon. And after about a month, Duke said, hey, I can't really find anybody else that I like. So do you just want to stay on for a while? And I said, all right, sounds good. And that was in 2009, June of 2009. So I've stuck around ever since, I guess.
So that's interesting, because most people come in from either the investor side or from the realty side. So you're that small percentage that came in a different way.
I just got into it literally, and I did every single job under the sun for Dodson. At the time, we were part of a different brokerage, and so I split time. I was basically a secretary / property manager assistant. So I did like contracts and stuff for the brokerage side of the business, and then I answered phones and set appointments for a leasing agent on the Dodson property management side. So fortunately, that gave me a really awesome ground level view of what this whole thing is. And so, moving up through property manager and then eventually to COO of Dodson, I've served in all those different jobs, so I've got a pretty good perspective on it.
So would you say that the growth of the company allowing you to serve in all those different jobs is kind of why you maintained and stayed in the industry, or did you just have a love affair with the industry, or why stay so long?
To be frank, and I hope he doesn't download this, but I mean, my relationship with Duke was a big part of it. My involvement with NARPM has been a big part of it. Obviously, I'd love to say it's all about other people, but there's a really great part about being involved and volunteering your time and giving back that keeps you attached to the industry. I do love the industry. I think you have an opportunity to deal with human beings every day, and I think that is a strength of mine, and that's what gives me some energy and keeps me going throughout the day, is leading and coaching people, and then also providing good experiences for people on the customer service side. So I think that's really where I've fallen in love with it, is just the human aspect. I know that might be the easy answer, is, I love the people, but for me, it's really true. And it's selfish because I get energy from that. That's what inspires me every day and gets me out of bed in the morning, is trying to help folks get better and have positive experiences.
So the big news before we scheduled this was that Dodson and Evernest merged.
Yes.
Right. So can you tell us a little bit about the decision to merge with Evernest, or are you not inclined to say anything, or how much can you tell us about what the reason, what the behind it, or how's the due diligence process? So if somebody is actually looking to merge or sell or buy, what are some of the pitfalls that they should be looking at when they go through this process?
Yeah. So obviously two distinct parts, and I'll try to remember the second part. If I forget to it, please remind me of it at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But the first part, it's a good question. So, I mean, I think it dates back. We did a podcast about this on the Evernest side. So there's another.
Evernest got the scoop on this one, folks, but NARPM came in pretty quick.
There's another podcast that was after business hours. So I was drinking some White Claws, so I was a little more loose-lipped during that one. But so I mean, I think the iterations of this are. We've been pals with Matthew and his squad for a long time, about 10 years. I mean, we met, I think 8, 9, 10 years ago at a NARPM conference, went to dinner, picked each other's brains.
And I know you guys are in a kind of a mastermind together.
Started a mastermind together with some other groups, and just really kind of grew up in this industry together. We had always kind of chit-chatted about, hey, maybe we'll do this, and maybe we'll team up one day, because we had been so aligned in vision and the way we grew our companies, and what our end goals were, that we had always kind of chit-chatted about it. And we'd gone through a little bit of turmoil at Dodson, some turnover and some leadership positions, and suddenly it just made sense to to make the call. I mean, I think it was probably something, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that it was maybe always inevitable. Both companies, we were growth mindset, but also, really focused on our employees and the customer experience. And so it just made
I
sense
do
to
have to
line up.
ask, is the mind and the Pures of the world, did they kind of spark some of this?
I mean, I think you have to be paying attention to the industry, right? I mean, I think we don't necessarily all know what it's going to be like in 5 years. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying we looked at Mind and Pure and all those folks and said, well, we better do this now or we're in a lot of trouble. Because I think there would have been space for Evernest and Dodson Property Management to play. We were both on really great trajectories. Dodson had expanded into HOA management, small multifamily management, build to rent, multifamily, commercial, short-term rental. So we had a bunch of different business lines that we were using as verticals to grow. So I think there was still going to be space for us. But yeah, I mean, I think you look around the industry and you say, well, here's a trend. Is this a trend we want to follow? Can we do it as well? Can we do it better? Are there pitfalls that we've seen that we can try to avoid and maybe even elevate quicker and faster? And so, yeah, I mean, I think, again, I'm not going to say it's a direct result of that stuff happening, but yeah, I mean, I think you got to pay attention to what's going on in the industry and make strategic decisions to help you get to your goals.
So tell me a little bit about, okay, you guys made a decision. One of the big thing is, how do you let your team know? Was there a small finite group of people that knew from the beginning? And then did we let the team know after it happened? And how did the team react? And give us through that, okay, now we told everybody, like, give us that little piece of it.
Yeah. So another funny story. I got a bunch of funny stories for you today, Pete. Sorry.
I know you do, man. I mean, that's the only reason why I served on the board with you, is for your funny stories.
It was funny as heck. There we go. We can repeat that one. But yeah, so yes, we let a small group of people know on our leadership team at Dodson what was going on. It seemed the appropriate way to do things to get buy-in, because I think, anytime there's a change, especially a massive change like that, you're going to have an emotional response to it, right? And there's only so much information you can get out when you sit in front of an entire company to fill in the blanks with folks. And so people are going to naturally fill in the blanks with the worst case scenario. Yeah. So for us, a little bit of a strategy was, one, the people on our leadership team have been around here for a long time. So out of respect, we're going to let them know what's happening. And two, that'll help us with buy-in down the line. It's like, hey, if these folks are in the know as to what's going on, they'll be able to answer questions with people that they have more direct relationships with. So I think there were about 8 or 9 people at Dodson that knew. And then you get to the day of, right, where you got to announce it to everybody. I'll tell you, that's a little bit of a nerve-wracking day.
Yes, it is. I've been there.
So, I thought I was going to be one of the people in the audience having my response come from that perspective. Well, unfortunately, Duke ended up in the hospital that day.
Oh,
yeah. So he had a little issue, and so about 45 minutes before we were slated to tell everyone at an all staff meeting, Duke texted me and said, "Hey, by the way, you have to tell everyone this news." So without much. Without much.
And how many team members did Dodson have at the time?
So overall, we had about 165, and about 100. About 100 went over to Evernest. So yeah, so we had a lot of people on Zoom. We had about probably 80 people in person in our office, and without much notice, I had to get up in front of everyone and let them know what was going on. I will say, for those of people who are thinking about going through it, don't expect it to be an easy experience, but it's an extremely rewarding experience, especially if you're close with your staff like I was. I mean, we've got people on our staff that, come to my kids' birthday parties. I go to their kids' birthday parties. We've gone on double dates with people, like people you're really, really tight with, and know intimate details about your life. And you've spent a lot of time growing up together. And so it's an emotional experience, but it's a really positive one. When you're talking about the opportunities that you're working on developing for those folks, and you're just able to get that message out to them and say, hey, one, thank you for your time with Dodson. We're not going anywhere. It's just, it's just the next chapter in the Dodson story, and we're called Evernest. Is kind of how I look at it. And so it was a really rewarding experience to actually get to tell people. I ended up being really happy that Duke was in the hospital, because I got to be on that side of it instead of sitting in the audience.
Now, you said 100 out of 165 went over to Evernest.
Yep.
Did the other 65, what happened to those folks?
So Dodson Property Management still exists. So
Okay.
there's a development group there, short-term rentals, and commercial property management stayed as Dodson Property Management. And then we actually, at the same time.
So did Evernest buy all the single family contracts?
I'm sorry?
Did Evernest merge with the single family division? Is that
Evernest? Yeah, Evernest merged single family, homeowners association management, and small multifamily.
Okay.
And then Atrium Management, who's Michael Kraus and Adam Wonis out of Orlando.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, they bought our multifamily division. So
okay.
Yeah, it was kind of a all at once sort of thing.
Now, so is Duke on some beach now, retired, or did he take a position with Atrium or with or is he still running the little piece of Dodson? What is he doing?
Yeah, so he's running the little piece of Dodson, and then he's also helping on the Evernest side, on the acquisition side. So he's working. His team is working on finding targets and companies to partner with, and those folks who are ready to either exit the industry or partner or merge with Evernest. His team works on that side of it. So he's probably about half time with Evernest, half time with Dodson and his development projects.
It's funny. It's like when we talk growth back a few years ago, growth was like, how many contracts can I get? How many PM contracts can I get? Now growth is acquisitions. How many PM companies can I merge with or purchase or anything like that? So,
well, and that's certainly an important part of it, but I wouldn't discredit the organic growth. It's still out there, especially with the economy the way it's going. You got to be set up over the next year and a half to.
So when you say the way the economy is going, what do you mean by that? A lot more of the reluctant landlords coming on.
Accidental landlords. Yeah, it's starting to feel that way, isn't it? I mean, interest rates are going up, and we're not.
Market's slowing. It's still a hot market, but it's definitely not white hot.
Doesn't feel like it felt even 4 months ago, does it?
No.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
And so I was just speaking of NARPM. We just had our board meeting in Atlanta. We got together and. We were talking about trends. One of the big things we were talking about, it's great to hear when you have a group of people from all over the country, what's going on in each one of their markets. Right. And so I actually heard the word foreclosures twice.
Wow.
So, that's not necessarily happening in Richmond where we are. And I haven't heard that much, but I've heard that they're up. There's trends that they may be happening again. So it's, certainly not like 2010 or so, but the economy is probably headed towards recession light. And so in circumstances like that, typically that's a time for growth in property management. And the other side of it is
let's pivot that way. So let's pivot that way. So I actually, called you numerous times and just picked your brain because you personally and Dodson as a company did an amazing job on getting those contracts on finding new business. Your sales process, your marketing and sales process, I felt were just amazing. And, we picked your brain numerous times. So if someone's listening to this and they, they're having some struggles, maybe getting some new clients, what are some of the things that Dodson did that maybe, or that you did personally, that maybe you can give a couple of tidbits or nuggets to some of the folks listening so that they can increase their business?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great question, and thank you for your compliment. One, thank you for calling us and asking about it, and then thank you for broadcasting it over on your podcast. That we did a good job at it. But no, I mean, I think what we did really well at Dodson and now at Evernest is we matched our sales process to who we are. I've taught a few classes, and I think when I was a little bit younger and we first had this idea, I was a little bit pompous about, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. But I think in retrospect, what we did really well is just match our process to who we are as an organization, right? When you're selling somebody, there's only so much difference between services and pricing. And obviously you can, hey, I'm going to I'm going to be
Under.
bottom barrel pricing, and I'm going to try to get on Google Ads and try to do some campaigns, and then I'm going to get a bunch of leads. Well, that'll work for a time, but at the end of the day, you really got to match who you are. So our philosophy was, we got to tell our story. And I think people out there listening, you should tell your story. Somebody's going to buy your story more than your services. Now, they might be intertwined, but they're going to buy your story. And if your story and your services and how you're presenting those things all match up, it's going to feel
natural,
like some natural, and that somebody can easily get lost in that, not lost, but they can buy into it. Excuse me. So, one of the things that we did first, just to tell our story a little bit, is we built a pitch deck that was very engaging, was very out there, was very, super branded our way, super, like I said, engaging with somebody, something we could just leave behind. It wasn't a piece of paper, and it wasn't, hey, we're going to come into your living room and we're going to sit down and we're going to show you our contract and we're going to tell you our pricing and we're going to sit in your kitchen and tell you, this flooring needs to get pulled up. Our story was, hey, we're a tech first company. We're going to be efficient with your time. We're going to be efficient with our time, and we're going to understand your wants and needs and where you are. So we actually, I think we're some of the first folks to do Zoom sales pitches. So our salespeople were very busy between 11:30 and 1 during people's lunch hours. Yeah. We were not sending people to people's houses at 7:30 at night saying, hey, here's our contract, here's our leave behind. We were putting
I still find it amazing that people still do that, right? They still go into these houses. So if you didn't go to a house, let me just gotta ask, what did you do to make sure, like, okay, we can manage this house? It's something that we would manage. Yeah.
So it's not, I'm not certain that you have to go to somebody's house to understand that, right? There's some tools out there that, the naughty Z word, Zillow, you can get on Zillow.
Isn't it Google Earth, another one of our friends, right?
Google Earth. And then we had something in our contract that said, our salespeople are not experts in property management. They understand property management. They may have done property management.
So you had separate BDMs selling services, and then they would hand over to the property manager.
Hand it over to property management. Yep. And our senior property managers, our experts in this, had an ability to go assess the property and have an out, essentially. It didn't happen that often, quite frankly.
Did you have the PMs actually go to the property and do like an assessment, or did you actually have like a field techs go?
Yeah. So after it varied a little bit. So here's how the process was supposed to work. Sales, research, understand rents, understand what part of town it's in, understand if those are areas that we service, right? You can tell a lot from the area and the rent.
Zip code tells you a lot.
Zip code tells you a lot. The rent tells you a lot, right? And so if you're, they were responsible for doing a bunch of work ahead of time there. Once the contract signed, it goes over to operations, and our senior property manager is supposed to onboard that client. And so they were supposed to go check out the property. Now, is that how it always happened? No. You try to develop people. You give them opportunities to go to the properties.
Pause right there real quick.
Yeah.
Who actually, okay, so the salesperson sold it, but who put all the info, who gathered all the information and put it in the system? Was that the property manager after they got the contract from the salespeople and they did their due diligence? Yeah. Or did the salespeople go get the keys, if they got the keys, leases, things of that nature?
You're asking some really deep, detailed questions, and
this is a NARPM podcast. We want to know the details.
I love it. Put me on the hot seat. So, again, the way it was supposed to go, our BDMs did a ton of work up front, right? We had a property information sheet. They were supposed to fill it out as much as they possibly could in a discovery call. So, all the details, the rents, all that sort of stuff. Where the water shutoff is, what type of heating it is, what type of cooling, does it have central air, all that stuff.
Which is great. It's obviously the reluctant landlord gives you all that information. The investor in California gives you about 2% of it.
Exactly. No, they don't. Even the reluctant landlord, you'd be surprised how many people don't know what type of heat they have. They don't know. They're paying the bill. They just don't even know. But so obviously there's upfront work there, and then it would go to operations, and operations would confirm that information and go out to the property and visit and confirm all that information. So if you can do as much of the upfront work as you can, you save operations a little bit. At what point we even had somebody who was in between, who was and I would love to get him back.
Like an onboarding specialist?
An onboarding specialist that would bridge that gap. So, hey, I'm making sure.
Was a VA or was that somebody in-house?
It was somebody in-house. We hired this young kid and he was a super go-getter. And it was before we really started using VAs. Connor, I wish he was still here, but he's too smart. He left as he grew up. He left and is in the sales world.
Good for Connor.
Yeah, good for Connor. But no,
all right, so now the PM gets it, and they actually, so in the what it's supposed to be, they're supposed to go to the property. Is that right?
Yep.
Back in the day,
yeah, they're supposed to go to the property, grab keys, and then we do have VAs kind of following up a little bit, trying to grab leases and that sort of thing.
Got it.
But even
now,
BDMs,
let's say it was a property kind of slipped through the cracks. It's not really one you can manage or want to manage. What is that? What did that look like? Did they just kind of push it back to the salesperson, or did they let the owner know, like, hey man, we're going to use our clause that you put in your PMA and we're out of this deal?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you always want to, it's a tough message to deliver sometimes, but you always want to just be upfront and direct and say, hey, listen, this isn't in our wheelhouse, or this property needs way too much work. Here's our suggestion. If you do all these things, we'd be happy to manage it. Honestly, once you have that conversation, more often than not, they say, wow, thank you for the honesty. Let's get this stuff going and I'll get this in shape and we can rent it out. And so it ends up
in the off chance that you didn't take the door. I'm assuming the salespeople got paid on a base salary plus commission, or is it all commission? And then that would get lost, right? That commission you wouldn't pay out on that commission?
Yeah, correct. Base salary plus commission on a per door basis.
Okay. So now
we would not. I'll be honest with you, it happened very rarely.
Because you had guidelines. Did you have guidelines in place? Like, this is what we will take, this is what we won't take. And then what happens if it fell in that gray area? So you have black, white, and you have gray. How'd that work?
We did, that would have been smart to have that, but we didn't. But we incentivize our property managers to take on more property. So they have an incentive per property that they take on. And so therefore they always were trying to make it work. And so, our strategy, for those listening also, might be a little bit different than your strategy. We've always wanted to get to a certain door count, and we're always in growth mode at Evernest. 250 doors is kind of our goal moving forward. 250,000 doors is our vision moving forward. So that might not be somebody who wants 250 doors. They might do things a lot differently. Not to say that our sales process couldn't work, but you would need to be a lot more stringent with your guidelines, put in very strict, hey, here's where I am. Here's the rent that I want per property. Here's the areas that I want to work in, and I don't want to go out here. And you can be more selective, and you should write those guidelines in there. If something falls in a gray area, I think you just make a call. You say, hey, this is something I want or I don't want. I would say the one thing you really need to do is be prepared, if you don't want it, to have somebody that will take it, and you can refer it. So you still are a resource to that owner that signed up with you.
And maybe even get a commission on that side of things.
Exactly. And it's still a good experience for the person that you signed up.
All right, Tim, we're up against it. We're going to take a quick break and then the lightning round. Are you nervous?
I'm ready. I'm ready for the lightning round.
All right. We'll be right back.
Thanks.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We got my buddy, Tim. Tim, thank you so much for being here again. And are you ready for the lightning round?
I was born ready for a lightning round.
Oh, man. All right. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. First thing that comes to your mind, just say it. They're supposed to be pretty quick, short answers. If you want to expand on anything, go for it.
I can't. Okay. You know me enough. I can't do short. So come on.
I know. We already went. All right. What PM software do you use?
Appfolio.
What is one piece of advice you would give somebody just starting out in the PM business?
Other than get your NARPM membership going, find a mentor, find a single mentor or two mentors that you can rely on.
That's a great advice. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Heck no, that's gross.
What book are you currently reading, or what is one that has impacted your business or life?
Ooh. Currently I'm reading The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And that's pretty good. It's the second time I've read it. I'm going to look over here. I got a bunch of books right here. Who is a great book? Who is a great book for hiring? Love it.
Okay.
It's awesome. Yeah. So if you're struggling with hiring, it's a difficult labor market out here. Who is a good one?
Thanks. Which Marvel character do you most associate with?
Which Marvel character do I most associate with?
Comes to a lot of people.
Ant-Man, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing most of the time, but somehow I work hard and it seems to work out most of the time for me, I guess. I don't know.
What was your first job? Dick's Sporting Goods? I'm sure you started sooner than that.
Yeah, I mean, like first job when I was a little kid was a paper route.
Okay.
Yeah, I did landscape, but really other than the paper route thing, I did my buddy in high school had like a little landscaping company he started, I think 8th grade or 9th grade year, and I worked with him. And we ended up kind of expanding it a little bit. It was nice.
That's awesome. What is your ideal vacation, or what is the best vacation you've ever taken? Either one.
Well, I just took one a couple weeks ago down to Sarasota, Florida, and went to the beach. I'm not a huge beach guy. I like something with a little bit of city. I think typically beach towns have crappy food, and I'm a kind of a food nut. So I think, yeah, a couple days at the beach, a couple days inland where you get a little bit of the mix of both.
Nice. Other than the NARPM podcast, do you have a podcast that you like and that you would recommend?
Matthew will kill me if I don't mention the Evernest podcasts, but I'm not a huge podcast guy. I
You're
don't
more of a
love
book guy, huh?
Yeah, I don't love audiobooks either. We moved out to the suburbs I guess a year ago, really, just a year ago. And so I've had to start doing the audiobook thing as I'm driving to work. Went from a 5-minute commute to a 27-minute commute. So I'm learning there, but it's not my favorite thing.
Do you prefer dogs or cats?
Dogs, 100%. Yeah, cats are mean.
Tim, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way they get in touch with you?
Text me.
Seriously?
Text me. Yeah, absolutely. 804-426-1660. Text me.
First.
Text me. Let me know what's going on. Happy to help any way I can. Or reach out through the NARPM website, president-elect at narpm.org.
There you go.
Yeah.
If you want to join NARPM, go to narpm.org, NARPM.org, or call the good folks out there at 800-782-3452. If you are interested in virtual team members, virtual assistants, go to vpmsolutions.com. You can learn all about my company, or you can email me at pete@vpmsolutions.com. Thanks, Tim, for being here. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Pete.